unlimited drama series.
The candles on Adrian's birthday cake flickered as I leaned back in my chair at Marcello's, the trendy bistro I'd chosen for his 36th birthday dinner. The warm glow cast shadows across the faces of our extended family gathered around the table. His mother Miriam, his sister Sabine, my mother Judith, and his father Howard. The conversation had turned to our upcoming kitchen renovation, and Adrian had just suggested we consider a more budget-friendly contractor. "Oh, please," I laughed, waving my wine glass dismissively. "We don't actually listen to him when it comes to big decisions. I mean, let's be honest here. I make the real choices in our house." The laughter that followed felt forced, but Sabine giggled along with my mother. "Cal has always been the decisive one," Judith chimed in, patting my arm approvingly. I caught Adrian's eyes across the table. They were completely still, expressionless, like he was memorizing every word, every laugh, every face around that table. The way he sat there, silent and unmoving, sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. But I pushed the feeling away. He was being too sensitive as usual. "Come on, honeys," I said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "You know I'm just teasing. But seriously, when have you ever made a major decision without running it by me first?" Adrian's hand remained limp under mine. "Never," he said quietly, his voice so flat it made Miriam frown. "See?" I grinned at the table. "He gets it. Some people are natural leaders, and some people are, well, followers. Nothing wrong with that." Howard cleared his throat uncomfortably, but I was riding the wave of attention. This was my moment to shine, to show everyone how perfectly I had everything under control. I mean, just last week, Adrian wanted to invest in some cryptocurrency thing he read about online. Can you imagine? I had to explain to him why that was a terrible idea. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a child who needs constant guidance. The candle smoke curled upward as the laughter died down. Adrian hadn't touched his cake. He just sat there, watching, absorbing, filing everything away in that methodical mind of his. "Adrian works so hard," Miriam said carefully. "His job at the courthouse requires incredible attention to detail." "Oh, absolutely," I agreed. "He's wonderful at following instructions and recording what other people say. It's perfect for him. No decision-making required." That's when I noticed Adrian pull out his phone and type something quickly. The blue glow reflected off his face as his fingers moved with the same precision he used in court, documenting testimonies word for word. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" I asked, my voice carrying just a hint of edge. "Just making a note," he replied, slipping the phone back into his pocket. "For later." Something in his tone made my stomach flutter, but I brushed it off. Adrian was harmless. He'd never stood up to me in 10 years of marriage. Why would he start now? As we gathered our things to leave, I overheard Howard whispering something to Miriam about patterns and documentation. But when I looked over, they both smiled pleasantly at me. The drive home was silent except for our 7-year-old daughter, Isla, chattering about her upcoming school play from the back seat. Adrian's hands gripped the steering wheel steadily, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "You're not upset about dinner, are you?" I asked as we pulled into our driveway. "You know I was just having fun with everyone." "I know exactly what you were doing, Calla," he said, turning off the engine, "and so does everyone else." That night, after Isla was tucked into bed, I found Adrian in his home office, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his face. Spreadsheets covered the monitor, and I could see my name in several of the column headers. "Working late?" I asked from the doorway. "Something like that," he replied without looking up. "Just keeping track of things. You know how I am with details." I wanted to ask what kind of things, but something in his posture warned me off. Instead, I went to bed alone, the image of those spreadsheets nagging at the back of my mind. Over the next few weeks, I found myself paying more attention to the little ways I managed our household. It wasn't control, it was efficiency. Adrian had never shown much interest in financial planning or major decisions anyway. So why shouldn't I handle everything? I rerouted his work mail to my email address, explaining to the postal service that I needed to screen for important documents while he was busy at the courthouse. When his annual performance bonus hit our joint account, I transferred it to my personal savings. We needed that money for the kitchen renovation, and Adrian would just worry unnecessarily about spending it. Did my bonus come through yet? He asked one evening while reviewing our bank statements. Oh, that, I said, not looking up from my magazine. I moved it to the renovation fund. You don't need to worry about tracking every penny, honey. I've got it handled. Without asking me, I sighed dramatically. Adrian, we've been through this. You get overwhelmed by financial planning. Remember when you wanted to put money into that ridiculous cryptocurrency? I'm just protecting us from your impulses. He stared at me for a long moment, then returned to the bank statements. I watched him make notes in the margins, his handwriting small and precise. What are you writing? I asked. Just keeping track, he said. For my own records. The next morning, I decided it was time to establish clearer boundaries with Isla. She was getting old enough to understand family dynamics, and I wanted her to have a strong female role model. Sweetheart, I said as I braided her hair for school, you know how Mommy makes most of the important decisions in our house, right? Isla nodded, though she looked confused. That's because some people are natural leaders, like Mommy, and some people are better at following directions, like Daddy. There's nothing wrong with either way, but it's important to know who's really in charge. Can you remember that? I think so, Isla said quietly. Good girl. And if anyone ever asks you about our family, just remember, Daddy doesn't really decide things. Mommy does. That's how we keep everything running smoothly. I didn't notice Adrian standing in the hallway until I turned around. He was holding his coffee mug, steam rising between us like a barrier. Morning, he said evenly. Morning, honey. I was just explaining to Isla how our family works, helping her understand structure and leadership. Adrian set down his mug and pulled out his phone. Isla, can you tell Daddy what Mommy just said? Our daughter looked between us nervously. Mommy said she makes the decisions and you don't really decide things. Adrian typed rapidly on his phone, then showed the screen to Isla. Can you see what time it is, sweetheart? 7:42, she read, and thank you. He slipped the phone away and kissed Isla's forehead. Have a great day at school, princess. After he left for work, I called my mother to vent about Adrian's increasingly strange behavior. He's becoming obsessive, Mom. Always writing things down, tracking conversations. It's like he doesn't trust me. Well, honey, Judith said, maybe he's finally realizing how lucky he is to have someone who can handle all the real responsibilities. Some men get intimidated when their wives are more capable. Exactly. I just wish he'd appreciate everything I do for us instead of acting paranoid about every little thing. That evening, Adrian came home with a manila folder tucked under his arm. He disappeared into his office immediately, and I could hear him on the phone with someone speaking in low professional tones. Who was that? I asked when he emerged an hour later. Just work stuff, he said. We're updating our documentation protocols. Documentation for what? Everything, he replied, meeting my eyes directly. Turns out it's important to have accurate records of patterns. Something in the way he said patterns made my skin prickle, but I forced a laugh. You and your work obsessions. Just don't let it take over your whole life. Don't worry, Kala. I know exactly what my priorities are now. That night, I lay awake listening to the soft clicking of his keyboard from the office down the hall. Whatever he was documenting, he was being very thorough about it. My relationship with Rowan Beck had started innocently enough. As the regional HR director, he was technically my boss, but we'd always had an easy rapport. He was charming, confident, and unlike Adrian, he appreciated my take-charge attitude. You're wasted in that mid-level position, Rowan said during one of our increasingly frequent coffee meetings. Someone with your leadership skills should be running departments, not just administering policies. It felt incredible to be seen and valued for who I... really was. Rowan understood ambition in a way Adrian never could. The first time we kissed was after a late strategy session at his downtown condo. I told Adrian I was working overtime on a compliance project, which wasn't technically a lie. We were definitely working on something. I should go, I whispered against Rowan's lips, but I made no move to leave. Should and want are different things, he murmured, pulling me closer. I began staying late at the office more frequently, deleting the calendar invites from our shared system so Adrian wouldn't see the pattern. Rowan and I had developed a routine, dinner at his place, strategy sessions that had nothing to do with HR policies, and mornings where I'd slip out before his neighbors were awake. "You seem happier lately," Sabine commented during our weekly sister-in-law lunch. "More energized." "I'm just finally feeling appreciated," I said, which was completely true. It's amazing what happens when someone recognizes your worth. "Adrian doesn't appreciate you?" I sighed dramatically. "Adrian appreciates having someone who handles everything for him." But appreciation and recognition are different things. Rowan, my boss, he sees my potential. He's been mentoring me. That's wonderful. Maybe Adrian could learn something from him. Maybe, I agreed, though privately, I doubted Adrian could ever develop Rowan's confidence and vision. At home, Adrian had become even quieter than usual. He'd nod politely when I explained my late nights, make dinner for himself and Isla, and retreat to his office with his endless spreadsheets and documentation. "How's work going?" he asked one evening as I rushed to change clothes before another strategy session. "Busy, but good. Rowan has me working on some high-level projects that could really advance my career." "Rowan Beck?" I paused, surprised he knew the name. "Yes. Do you know him?" "I've heard of him. Married to Lynn Beck, right? The attorney who handles family law cases?" I think so." "Why?" Adrian shrugged. "Just making conversation. You mention him a lot lately." "He's my supervisor, Adrian. Of course I mention him." "Of course," Adrian agreed. But something in his tone made me defensive. "Is there a problem with me advancing my career?" "Not at all. I just want to make sure you're being careful. Office relationships can be complicated." "It's not a relationship," I snapped. "It's professional mentoring." "God, you're so suspicious lately." "I'm just observant," he said quietly. "It's what I do for a living." That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Lynn Beck. We should meet." My blood went cold. I quickly deleted the message and blocked the number, but my hands were shaking. How had Rowan's wife gotten my number? What did she know? I decided not to mention it to Rowan. It was probably nothing. Maybe she was looking for HR advice or something completely innocent. There was no point in creating drama over a simple text message. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Adrian's steady breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that my carefully constructed world was starting to shift beneath me. The next morning, I found Adrian in the kitchen earlier than usual, reviewing what looked like bank statements and phone bills. "What's all this?" I asked, pouring myself coffee. "Just checking some discrepancies," he said. "Did you know our home Wi-Fi shows your phone connecting to a network called RB_private almost every Tuesday and Thursday night for the past 3 months?" My coffee mug slipped, splashing hot liquid across the counter. What? How would you even know that?" "Router logs," Adrian said simply. "I set up monitoring after we had those security concerns last year. Remember? You insisted we needed to track all device activity. I had completely forgotten about that. Well, I'm sure it's just some random network my phone picks up. You know how these things work." "Actually, I do know how they work," Adrian said, his voice still calm and professional. "And this particular network is registered to an address on 5th Street, apartment 4B. The address hit me like a physical blow. That was Rowan's condo. "Adrian, I can explain." "Can you?" He looked up from the papers, and for the first time in months, his eyes weren't expressionless. They were sharp, focused, and completely alert. Because I'd really like to hear that explanation. I realized I needed to get ahead of whatever Adrian thought he'd discovered. The best defense was a good offense, and I had the perfect weapon, our daughter's testimony about our family dynamics. "Isla, sweetheart," I said the next morning while Adrian was in the shower, "remember what we talked about? About how Mommy makes the important decisions?" She nodded, picking at her cereal. "Well, Daddy might ask you some questions about our family, and it's very important that you tell the truth. Can you tell me again who makes the decisions in our house?" "You do, Mommy." "That's right. And what about Daddy?" "Daddy doesn't decide things," she recited, but her voice was small and uncertain. Perfect. Now, if anyone else asks you, like a teacher or counselor, you just tell them the truth about how our family works, okay? I'd already scheduled a meeting with the school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, under the guise of discussing Isla's adjustment issues. It was important to establish the narrative early, in case Adrian tried to paint me as the problem. Mrs. Morrow, Mrs. Patterson said as I settled into the chair across from her desk, Isla seems to be doing well academically. What specific concerns did you want to discuss? I'm worried about some tension at home, I said, letting my voice carry just the right amount of vulnerability. My husband has been acting strange lately. Obsessive behavior, tracking our activities, making accusations.
A couple's spa. You took her to the place we go.
It was a birthday gift. She's a friend. Friends don't get $500 couples massage.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
I'm concerned about how it might be affecting Ela. Mrs. Patterson made notes as I spoke. Can you give me some examples? He monitors our internet usage, questions every decision I make, and lately he's been interrogating Isla about family conversations. I think he might be having some kind of breakdown. That does sound concerning. How does Isla respond to these behaviors? She's learned to be very careful around him. She knows that I'm the stable parent, the one who actually makes decisions and keeps our household running. I'm just worried about the psychological impact of his increasingly erratic behavior. Mrs. Patterson scheduled a follow-up meeting to speak with Isla directly. Perfect. I spent the next few days reinforcing our family's truth with my daughter. Remember, sweetheart, just tell Mrs. Patterson how things really work at home. Mommy makes the decisions, and Daddy, well, Daddy just follows along. That's the truth, right? I guess so, Isla said, but she seemed more confused each time we had these conversations. The meeting with Mrs. Patterson went exactly as planned. Isla sat in the chair beside me and dutifully recited her lines when asked about family dynamics. Mommy makes the decisions, she said quietly. Daddy doesn't decide things. I see, Mrs. Patterson said, making notes. And how do you feel about that, Isla? It's just how it is, Isla replied, glancing at me nervously. Does Daddy ever make decisions about things you care about? Like bedtime stories or what to have for breakfast? Isla hesitated, and I could see her struggling with the question. Well, sometimes. What Isla means, I interjected smoothly, is that Adrian handles small, day-to-day tasks under my guidance. But the real decisions, the important ones, those come from me. After the meeting, I felt confident that I'd established the right narrative. If Adrian tried to challenge my authority or paint me as controlling, I had professional documentation of our family structure. But when I got home, I found Adrian sitting at the kitchen table with his own notebook, writing in his careful, precise handwriting. How did the school meeting go? He asked without looking up. Fine, just routine check-in stuff. With Mrs. Patterson, I froze. How did you know that? She called me, Adrian said simply. Apparently, she likes to speak with both parents when there are concerns about family dynamics. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? The truth, Adrian said, finally looking up at me. I told her that I make breakfast for Isla every morning, that I help her with homework every night, that I read her bedtime stories and make decisions about her activities, her friends, and her well-being every single day. Adrian, I also told her that I'd be happy to bring Isla in for a separate conversation, without any coaching or preparation, just to hear her natural responses to questions about our family. The notebook in front of him was filled with dates, times, and detailed descriptions of conversations. I could see my name mentioned repeatedly, along with what looked like direct quotes. You're documenting our private conversations? I'm documenting patterns of behavior, Adrian said. It's what I do professionally, Calla. I create accurate records of what people say and do. That's sick. You're spying on your own family. I'm protecting my family, he corrected, from someone who thinks lying to school counselors and coaching children is acceptable behavior. That night, I called my mother in tears. He's completely out of control, Mom. He's recording everything I say, turning our daughter against me, making me look like the bad guy. Oh, honey, Judith cooed. He's probably just intimidated by your success at work. Men can be so fragile when their wives start outshining them. Maybe I should document his behavior too. Show people how paranoid and controlling he's become. That's a wonderful idea. You should protect yourself and Isla from his instability. I started taking photos of Adrian's notebooks and spreadsheets, posting carefully crafted social media updates about the challenges of being a single mother while married to someone who checked out of family responsibilities. But every time I tried to build a case against Adrian, I found that he was always one step ahead, with timestamps and documentation that told a completely different story than the one I was trying to create. I decided it was time to take control of the situation completely. Adrian's obsessive documentation and increasingly confident behavior were threatening everything I'd built. I needed to file for divorce first, establish myself as the victim, and ensure that I maintained custody of Isla and control of our assets. I want to file immediately, I told my attorney, Patricia Wells. My husband has become increasingly controlling and obsessive. He monitors my activities, tracks my internet usage, and has been psychologically manipulating our daughter. Patricia took notes as I laid out my case. Do you have documentation of these behaviors? He's the one doing the documenting, I said. Spreadsheets, notebooks, recordings. It's completely obsessive. No normal person behaves this way. And you mentioned concerns about your daughter. He's trying to turn her against me, questioning her about our conversations, making her uncomfortable around me. I think he might be trying to establish some kind of parental alienation case. Patricia nodded sympathetically. We'll file immediately and request temporary custody. Your husband's behavior sounds concerning. I felt triumphant as I signed the divorce papers. Let Adrian try to fight me with his little notebooks and spreadsheets. I had a real attorney and a legitimate case. But 3 days later, everything changed. I was in the middle of a strategy session with Rowan at his condo when my phone started buzzing frantically. Text after text from colleagues, friends, and family members. Calla, you need to see this, Sabine's text read, followed by a photo that made my blood freeze. It was me, walking into Rowan's building, time-stamped from the previous Tuesday. Someone had been watching, documenting, photographing. I have to go, I told Rowan, grabbing my clothes. What's wrong? I think Adrian knows about us. Rowan's face went pale. How much does he know? I don't know, but I'm about to find out. I drove home in a panic, my mind racing through possible explanations and damage control strategies. But when I walked into our house, I found Adrian sitting calmly at the kitchen table with a thick manila folder in front of him. We need to talk, he said. Adrian, whatever you think you know, I know that you've been having an affair with your supervisor for the past 4 months, he said quietly. I know that you've been using our daughter to establish false narratives about our marriage. I know that you've been financially manipulating our accounts and intercepting my personal correspondence. He opened the folder and I saw page after page of documentation. Bank records, internet logs, photographs, timestamps, witness statements. How did you... I'm a court stenographer, Calla. I create legal records for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't notice patterns in my own life? My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Patricia Wells. Mrs. Morrow, we have a problem. Your husband's attorney just delivered a counterpetition with over 200 pages of exhibits. We need to meet immediately. I hung up, staring at Adrian in shock. You hired an attorney? I hired an attorney 3 months ago, Adrian said. Right around the time your phone started connecting to Rowan Beck's private network every Tuesday and Thursday night. You've been planning this? I've been protecting myself and our daughter from someone who thinks lying, cheating, and manipulation are acceptable ways to handle a marriage. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find everyone staring at me. Whispers followed me down the hallway, and when I reached my desk, I found a message to report to HR immediately. Mrs. Morrow, the HR director said as I entered the conference room, we've received some concerning allegations about your relationship with Mr. Beck. My heart pounded. What kind of allegations? A formal complaint has been filed regarding inappropriate workplace conduct. We're required to investigate any potential policy violations between supervisors and subordinates. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see my colleagues watching. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed eager for gossip, but all of them were witnessing my humiliation in real time. "I need to see the complaint," I said. "The complainant has requested anonymity, but I can tell you that they've provided very detailed documentation. Hotel keycard records, building security footage, calendar inconsistencies." I knew immediately who had filed the complaint. Lindbeck had finally connected the dots. When I returned to my desk, there was a large manila envelope waiting for me. Inside were copies of everything Adrian had given to his attorney, and it was devastating. Photos of me entering Rowan's building, screenshots of deleted calendar invites, bank records showing the transferred bonus, audio recordings of me coaching Isla, witness statements from his family about my behavior at his birthday dinner. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. "You said I never get a vote. Let's see what the judge thinks about that." The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, but by then, my entire world had already collapsed. Rowan had been suspended pending the HR investigation, and his wife Lynn had filed for divorce, citing the evidence Adrian had somehow provided to her attorney. "How did this happen so fast?" I asked Patricia as we prepared for court. "Your husband has been building this case for months," she said grimly. "Every piece of evidence is properly documented, time-stamped, and legally admissible. It's some of the most thorough preparation I've ever seen. But I filed first. Doesn't that count for something? Not when the counterpetition has this level of documentation. Calla, we need to discuss settlement options. Fighting this in court could be devastating." I refused to consider settlement. Adrian was just a court stenographer with delusions of grandeur. I was a successful HR professional with a legitimate case against his obsessive behavior. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, but every seat was filled. Adrian's family sat behind him, Miriam, Howard, and even Sabine, who had completely withdrawn her support after seeing the evidence. My mother sat behind me, but she was the only one. Judge Harrison reviewed the timeline exhibit that Adrian's attorney presented. It was a masterpiece of documentation. Every instance of public humiliation, financial manipulation, and child coaching, laid out chronologically with supporting evidence. "Mrs. Morrow," the judge said, "can you explain why your husband's performance bonus was transferred to your personal account without his knowledge or consent?" "I was managing our renovation budget," I said. "Adrian gets overwhelmed by financial planning. According to his employment records, Mr. Price handles complex financial data and legal documentation as part of his professional duties. Does that seem consistent with someone who gets overwhelmed by household budgets?" I felt my face burning. He's different at home." "I see. And can you explain why you instructed your 7-year-old daughter to tell school counselors that her father doesn't decide things?" "I was just helping her understand our family structure. By coaching her to give false testimony about her father's role in her life?" Judge Harrison's questions continued for what felt like hours. Every answer I gave seemed to make things worse, while Adrian sat quietly beside his attorney, the same expressionless look on his face that I'd seen at his birthday dinner. When they called Isla to speak with the judge privately, I felt a flicker of hope. Surely she would remember what I'd taught her about our family dynamics. But when she returned 20 minutes later, her eyes were red from crying, and she wouldn't look at me. "Your Honor," the judge said when we reconvened, "I've rarely seen such a clear case of attempted parental alienation. Mrs. Morrow has systematically tried to undermine her daughter's relationship with her father through coaching and manipulation. Additionally, the evidence of financial abuse, public humiliation, and workplace misconduct paints a picture of someone who views marriage as a power dynamic to be controlled, rather than a partnership to be nurtured." The gavel fell with a sound that seemed to echo through my entire body. Primary custody to Adrian, supervised visitation for me, asset division favoring the documented victim of financial abuse, mandatory counseling, restraining order preventing me from coaching or influencing Isla's statements about family matters. As I walked out of the courthouse, a reporter shoved a microphone in my face. Mrs. Morrow, is it true that you told your husband he doesn't get a vote in family decisions? The camera flashes were blinding, but through them I could see Adrian walking calmly toward his car with Isla's hand in his. His father, Howard, was carrying a box of my belongings from our house. Mrs. Morrow, the reporter called again, did you really say your husband doesn't get a vote? I wanted to explain that it had been taken out of context, that Adrian was manipulative and controlling, that I was the real victim. But as I opened my mouth to speak, I caught sight of Adrian loading Isla's car seat into his vehicle. For the first time in our entire relationship, he looked completely at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Lynn Beck. Thank you for the evidence about my husband. My attorney says it will be very helpful in my divorce case. P.S. Adrian's documentation helped me understand exactly what kind of person I was dealing with. I hope you get the help you need. I stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by reporters and camera crews, and realized that Adrian had been right about everything. He never did get a vote in our marriage, but he got the only vote that mattered in